Welcome to another episode of What Works for Me, a podcast highlighting best practices in Christian schools. This podcast is produced in partnership with Lutheran Education Association. To discover how LEA supports Christian teachers and schools, visit www.lea.org.
Welcome to What Works for Me. Today on the podcast, we have Dr. Thoward. She's the principal at Calvary Lutheran School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And today we're going to talk about school culture. So, Trinae, thanks for being on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. So I am in a unique position where I'm your predecessor here at Mount Calvary, right? And so it's nice to come in and see all the changes that have been made. And one of the big obvious ones is culture here. It's a great culture here that I know you spent a lot of time working on building in your first year here. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about kind of your whole culture building process?
So here at Mount Calvary, the best part is that I came into a culture that was already established. So I tell people I got to add my 2 cents. It was more than 2 cents, but I tell them I got to add my 2 cents to it. And so at the beginning of the school year, what we spent time doing was looking at all the things that were in place, any write-ups, officer visits, office referrals. And then along with that, we did what was called a culture walkthrough. So we looked at like what things are we hitting with our culture, what things are we not hitting with the culture, and then how can we ramp that up for the current school year. So myself and then the dean of students met to look at all those pieces, and then we laid out a plan that we then were going to lay out with teachers so that we can move it up from where it was to where we wanted it to be. That was a process in itself, because just knowing ahead of time, like all the office referrals, all the write-ups, things that kids that come to the office for, along with looking at the criteria of what a great school culture would be. It took some days for us to like go through and like pick out like what was going to be are like, these are the hills that we like have to hit because we don't want things to happen. These are our hills that like it's in a great place, but we also got to just be a little bit more strict on it. And then we had ones that we were like, come now or later, we have to make sure that these things happen so that kids are in the classroom and learning and not in the office. So that process alone took us a couple of days to like really narrow down what was going to be like our heavy layers and heavy pieces to hit.
I really like it. It sounds really intentional. You had a plan. You started looking at stuff. How do you come up with that idea? How do you start with, okay, we're going to look at the culture. We're going to do a specific walkthrough. We're going to identify these pieces. How do you come up with that?
So there's a program called Skyrocket. And so Skyrocket has like a leader culture walkthrough, a school culture walkthrough, and a teacher walkthrough. So I brought that over, shared it with the dean of students, and I gave him some time to just digest it for some days. Then we went back and looked at like, yes, this is something we want to do. Also share some videos of some other school cultures where he can see before and after, and then started to pick apart like, what do we want Mount Calvary to look like, and how do we start to implement that in baby steps, and then move our way to like, this is a solid piece that I was on board, he was on board, and then all of our teachers were on board. So I wish I could say it was like me amazingly coming up with this thing, but it wasn't. It's Skyrocket, who has a really great system that we use for all those pieces.
Well, there's nothing wrong with stealing good ideas when you see them. And, that's the nice part about good leaders is they find good stuff and they realize it doesn't come from them, and that's okay.
Yes, and we definitely did that. We were like, we're just going to implement it. And we didn't implement all of it, I should say that. We implemented the pieces on where we are, and then like each year we're going to build on it. So like this summer when we meet, we'll now plan on like what went well, what didn't go well, what are we going to fix, and like what are the things we're going to keep doing, and then move it to the next level so that we can do all 3 levels. So we started at the bottom and we're working our way up.
Okay, so in your teaching career, your administrative career, what point in that journey did you say, I want to be really good at culture, I want to be really intentional about this?
I would say when I was a 5K teacher, I'll never forget the leader that I had. Like she was really big on culture. And so I just remember in my classroom, I had a classroom of 5Kers, and it was 30 kids, myself and an aide, and it were 30 different personalities. And I just remember saying, I want the classroom that when somebody walks in, that it's always being shown off because the kids are doing what they're supposed to do. So she helped me become even more intentional in my teaching, which then made me say, if I can do it in one classroom, now let's see if we can duplicate it and do it across the building. So I was able to work in my classroom, but then in the afternoon, she let me work in middle school to help change the culture in there too. So I think once I started doing it enough, things became to be normal, where you can model, here's how you got to be specific for kids. Here's what I need to do. Here's what the students need to do, and then plan all that accordingly. And then it just got better each year.
What are some things that you picked up and you go, okay, this works really well every time? So I use this with kindergartners. I use this in the middle school. I use this in the whole school. Do you have a piece in there that is just has to be required?
Across all of them, I would say the biggest piece is like making sure that you're specific and concrete on what you want it to look like. If you don't know the outcome on what you want it to look like, then it's really not going to work because kids only go by what we do. So I was intentional, like I want my kids to travel this way in the room, this many seconds. Every single time we do it, it's not going to change, so that if I ever stepped out the room and somebody stepped in, they could clearly say, no, we always go left, then right, then left, so that it's a clear every single time it follows the same protocol. And so once I became intentional, made my kids become intentional, then our classroom became even more intentional in all the things we did, and it was less time wasted. So that was a big piece that I learned.
Yeah, I like that, being very intentional. That seems to be the big takeaway here. So somebody listening to this, let's say they're just starting their school culture journey, whether that's with their classroom, whether that's as a building leader, and they're listening to this and they go, oh, really specific. Okay, well, what about spontaneity? What about time for fun? I know you're a fun-loving person. I know that about you, right?
Right.
How does that fit into this model?
So once you get like clear, concise, and just specific things in your classroom, you'll have time for that because there's less downtime and less goofing off. So my goal is to tell kids, once we get through all of our business, then we can play. So it was like, if we work hard, then we get to play hard. And so that was always our everyday, like we knew, hey, we're going to work hard and get through all of our stuff so that there's extra 10 minutes or extra 15 minutes to do some fun pieces. But I will say this, again, the fun pieces were structured fun pieces. It wasn't like, we're just going to run around our room and play. It was like, we're going to play hangman with our spelling words. We're going to play math with our multiplication facts. So it was always intentional. Even when I did K5, the games we played were always intentional, whether it was letter sounds, whether it was making words, building words, it was always intentional, and it was structured enough that like you could walk in and see like they're all learning and there's 20 different things happening, but there's 20 things happening where it's very calm. Kids are getting what they need. The teacher's able to see what's happening. She or he can make it to every single space in the classroom, and still kids are having fun but learning along the way.
Yeah, that consistency part is really important. The kids, they want to know what to do, what to expect. And that goes for their teacher too. They want to know how their teacher's going to react to things.
Right.
I know I had to learn that the hard way as a teacher. I wasn't so great at that at the beginning, and I'm like, okay, well, hang on. They probably don't know what to expect of me, of the day. So that's a really good takeaway. Now,
I agree. I was not that person at the beginning. Listen, I was not that person at the beginning. I just remember every time the lady who was mentoring me would say, if they're not doing it right, you have to own it. You didn't teach it right. So I would quickly say, wait, sorry, I messed up. Let's go back. I wasn't clear on what I needed. So let's try this again. And I always said it was my fault, which then the kids would be like, no, we didn't do it right for you. So it just became like a team effort. It wasn't like I'm the boss or I'm demanding this thing. It became, we work together to make it our classroom the best it can be.
That's good. You recognize that you have a role in that, not just as the person who sets it up, but as the person who's got to live in it with them.
Right.
That's really neat. Now, there's some other things you do that I want to highlight here. So, morning assembly. Tell me about that.
So we start morning assembly here at Mount Calvary during the week, and it's really fun. So on Mondays, we always start with one of our core values. So we're going to work on a core value for the whole week. Besides working on that core value, we're always going to do some fun within that. So we recite some things. We have some chant days. We have birthdays we celebrate. Our biggest day, I want to say, is Thursday when we do academic shout outs where kids can shout out other kids. And so getting to this part in the school year where a kid who didn't know their multiplication facts now knows all their multiplication facts, it's like the biggest day. And like sometimes it gets to the point where like teachers have to say like everybody can't do a shout out. So now we started positive office referral shout outs. So a teacher can write up some of the ones that we missed, and at 3:00 I announce them at 3:00 every day so that we can catch all of the ones that we can't catch in assembly because everyone can't do one. But that's become like I think one of our biggest pieces where kids are now bragging on their academics. I even got one teacher this year to brag on her academics, which I think was great. And I thought that was like the best win ever. It's like when you can get a teacher to brag on the hard work I'm putting in with my kids, the hard work they're putting in, look at how far we've come together. That for me is growth. I'm like, yes, we can be proud of our learning, but still have fun and do it at the same time. So morning assembly is intentional because I can't change what happened outside of here, but what we can change as a faculty is how our kids start our day and how they then leave assembly and go to their classroom. So that's like a really big piece.
I really like that. Now, how long is morning assembly generally?
10 minutes. So it's very specific again. And it's like 10 minutes we're in and we're out. And like now that we have a routine, even our 4Kers will do the letter part for us. So we go over our core values. They now can do every letter in our core values and they lead that part. and they're 4. And so it took them to this like a couple months ago where they really got it, and now they're able to do it, but they lead that section. And so now it's really not adult led, it's really teacher led. So during Thursdays, 6th grade leads it. During the week, I have 5th and 4th grade and 3rd grade who lead it. So really I just actually stand up there and push the button, and the kids run the assembly, which is great.
I really like that. I think some people listening, they go, okay, I'd love to do it, but it sounds like so much work. Now, what I'm hearing, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like it's work at the beginning, but once you get it set up, you're actually saving a bunch of time and a bunch of effort. Is that right?
You do. It started off as longer in the beginning of the school year to get everyone into the routine and what was happening. But then once the kids got used to it after a couple months, like literally they run the entire thing. So I could stand in the back and a stranger could come in and kids could run assembly, and it would look as if like, oh, they must always, like, it just is that consistent. And they know that the slides doesn't change. Like every Monday we're going to have a Bible verse. Every Monday we're going to start with a core value. Every Thursday we're going to do this. Like they know all of those pieces. And so once you get into the routine, it becomes easy. And like I said, it's definitely kid led.
I really like that. Now let's talk about, there's something else I want to highlight here. They get sweaters, like letter sweaters. Tell me about that.
So the letter sweaters are like one of the coolest things I think we came up with this school year. So kids can earn a sweater based on a nomination from an adult or based on a nomination from multiple adults in our building. So whether it's a kid that's been on the honor roll all year long, whether it's a kid that's perfect attendance, whether it's a kid that's like always volunteering in a classroom, like you can always count on them. So teachers get an input on like writing up certain things about kids, and then it gets voted on. And so we've already given out one to our Charger winner, and now we're going to be giving out another one to another student. So we have 2 students who have a letter sweater that they can wear around the school, which now we have other kids who want to get one of those. And so that's become the new talk in middle school is, how do I get that sweater and what do I need to do? And that's what we want to build about our school. Like we want them to have pride. We want them to want to be here, but we also want them to know like they have to work for it. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think sometimes we approach culture as it's kind of these unwritten rules. It's a feel in the building, but it sounds like you've made everything very visible and very intentional. So kids see, hey, here's the expectation. And it's modeled for them constantly. They get to see kids who are doing it really well, kind of exemplars of that, what is expected of them. When did that piece come into play where you're like, okay, these are great, but we need to kind of show off now when kids are doing it really well?
I want to say at the beginning, the first couple of months, assembly was like this thing that we do. And so it wasn't like I want to be a part of this, but at one point I had some kids who decided that they were going to help me. I asked them, I said, hey, do you want to help me do assembly today? And so then it became like, I'm going to hurry up and rush and eat my breakfast because I want her to ask me. And then I didn't ask sometimes. And so it became this thing of like, is she going to ask? Is she not going to ask? And so I started to step back and let kids approach me, and they're like, can I do it for you? Can I do it with you? And so just building that momentum of like, this is a thing you want to do and you want to be a part of it, but including myself being extremely excited in the morning and super hype and bringing the noise and bringing the excitement, which then made kids say like, it's okay to be excited about school. And I can also get really loud, and this time they're not going to tell me to stop being loud. And that's the best part.
I really like that. Now, you're really good at this. I don't know if you'll admit that. You're really good at this culture building piece, and I just want to kind of give you a shout out for how good this is. I mean, I get to see it from afar, but it's really neat. It's really neat. Now, if somebody, they've listened to this, they love everything, they said, I want to do it, they have no clue where to start, what's the very first thing they could do?
I would say the very first thing to do is in your building, decide what you want your building to look like. So for me, the biggest piece was we didn't have assembly here. So I knew I was bringing something that was like really foreign. And so I was like, if I don't bring it and make it the best thing, then no one's going to want to do it. And so that was my goal, was being intentional. And so finding out what joy do you want to bring for your kids in the morning? Because like I said before, we can't change what happens outside of here, but what we can change is what their day looks like in here. And so I wanted to say, no matter what happened before you walk through the door, this is now your time to enjoy school and be in your safe place, but also brag about your school and brag about what's happening here. And so I would say be just extra intentional, like what does you want that to look like? And if you know it, then you got to be the person that lives it first before everyone else can jump on board with you.
I think that's great advice. Is there anything else you want to share with anybody before we wrap up today? Any other culture pieces you want to highlight that I maybe missed?
Nothing that we missed, but I would just say like, take culture as in your building. It doesn't always have to come from the leader. It can come from the teachers, from the students, but make sure that everyone has input, because the more input you have from everybody in the building, the bigger your buy-in will be. And so at the beginning, it was all me putting it all out there. But then once I started to get to kids buy-in and then the staff buy-in, I had teachers that was like, I got it this morning. Great. Go ahead and lead it. So then now they get to see different teachers being excited about starting their day. And so just making sure that you allow it to be a voice of reason from everybody, not just top down.
That's really good advice. Now, if somebody's listening, can they contact you with questions? And, if they got 50 questions, you okay answering that for them?
They can email me at thoward@mountcalvaryschools.org, or they can give us a call, and I would definitely love to share culture.
Okay, perfect. I'll include the email and I guess the office phone number. Marquita's going to love that. So people can call.
Deal.
Can I pray for you before we go?
Yes.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for Trinae. Thank you for her work, her passion, and her vision here at Mount Calvary. Please be with her as she continues to lead this school. Strengthen her relationships, strengthen her resolve, and allow her to continue to do the great work that you've put on her heart. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.